Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Eidelman, Public Affairs Specialist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District, formerly utilized sites remedial action program, welcomes you to this meeting. This meeting will begin in 10 minutes. Thank you.
We'll let you in, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I got to put passwords in.
Welcome to this meeting presented by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District, formerly utilized sites remedial action program. The virtual FUSRAP citizen outreach meeting will begin in 5 minutes. Please type your name into the chat so that we may know how many people attended. If you'd like to be added to the FUSRAP email list, please be sure to type your email address after your name. Legislators and their staff members are encouraged to identify themselves in the chat, as you are people from other local, state, and federal agencies. You may ask general questions at any time. They will be answered during the question and answer session later in the program. You are encouraged to take screenshots of the slides with the STL FUSRAP@usace.army.mil email address and other contact information. It'll be the last slide. This will help you avoid typing in the wrong email address. Property owners must use that email address to inquire about their properties so that personally identified information, PII, such as your address, isn't.
Who keeps the purchasing power, who keep inflation down is the Fed. If you attack the Fed, people who lend us money are either going
Please mute your audio and turn off your video to preserve bandwidth. Thank you.
Drink. Listen, wait.
Okay, just let me in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Eidelman, Public Affairs Specialist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District. Welcome to the virtual FUSRAP Citizen Outreach Meeting put on by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Louis District, formerly Utilized Sites Remedial Action Program. Let me take a few minutes to go over the ground rules. This meeting is being recorded and will be publicly available soon. Please put your name in the chat so that we know how many people attended. If you'd like to be added to the FUSRAP email list, please be sure to type your email address after your name. Legislators and their staff are encouraged to identify themselves in the chat, as are people from other local, state, and federal agencies. Only ask general questions in the chat. Please turn your video off in order to preserve bandwidth and improve quality. Mute your audio. Only the St. Louis District team and subject matter experts should have the video and be unmuted. If you can't remember the name of the person who is speaking, hover over well, that's irrelevant, so sorry about that. Please note that homeowners' questions about their property will only be accepted via email through stlfusrap@usace.army.mil and will be answered sometime after this meeting. Our last slide has our contact information so you can take a screenshot at that time. The health and safety of residents and workers are of the utmost concern to the FUSRAP team. FUSRAP's part in the community transition to improve public health and clean up radiological contaminants that exceed remediation goals, RGs, established in the record of decision. However, the FUSRAP team does not have a medical mission. Please maintain an atmosphere of respect for our agenda with opening remarks, and then the FUSRAP program overview, FUSRAP site updates, which includes St. Louis downtown sites, St. Louis airport sites, vicinity properties, LADI properties, and St. Louis airport sites, vicinity properties, VPs, VPs. And then we'll have a slide for contact information, and we'll roll into the Q&A section. So here to say a few words for opening comments, we have Phil Mosier, the FUSRAP program chief and chief of FUSRAP and environmental branch.
Thank you, Jeremy. As mentioned, I'm Phil Mosier, the chief of the FUSRAP and environmental branch in the St. Louis District Army Corps of Engineers. With me tonight are several subject matter experts as well as project managers that are dedicated to the FUSRAP program and the execution of each record of decision for each site. So tonight we're going to be talking some updates on the site and the progress that we've made since the last time we had a discussion. We'll start that off with a little bit of an overview and then get into specific site updates for the downtown site and then what we have going on at the St. Louis Airport site and the St. Louis Airport site, the properties. You may hear some people still joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started on the actual presentation in the interest of time so that we can get through the material and then have enough time left at the end for question and answers as we normally do on these virtual engagements. Right up front, I want to let everybody know that we are planning our next in-person engagement. So here in a few months, here pretty soon, you'll see another invite come out for our next in-person engagement. We have those, we'll continue to hold those, being the host as the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we'll also, we've also been attending the North County CAG meeting. So thank you, Dr. Jones, for your efforts on that. I see that you're on, so we appreciate all that you have done to help us, to help the community, and the overall conversation that we have had over the years to help bring that and help to relay some of these difficult technical concepts and let everybody know what's going on as far as our progress, things that we've done up to this date, and things that we have to do in the future. And then, as always, we'll have our contact, as Jeremy said, so make sure you take note of that. If you don't, during the presentation, we will have a copy of these slides on the website where we normally post our information from these meetings, as well as our contact information for any specific questions you may have. Please reach out to us. Next slide. Okay, so as we normally do with a lot of our presentations, I see that we have 35 individuals on right now. That's pretty normal, but we want to make sure that if you aren't all that familiar with FUSRAP and what we do, so specific to FUSRAP and here in the St. Louis District, we are part of a national program. And that national program, no matter where we're at, part of it is protecting human health and the environment because of the Manhattan Engineer District or Atomic Energy Commission activities. And the overall execution, some of these things that we've talked about, so it may be review for some of you, but I want to make sure to get this out there as far as the FUSRAP is a congressionally authorized program started in 1974 with the Department of Energy, and then was transferred via congressional action in 1997 to the Army Corps of Engineers. So hence, that's why we are here today executing the FUSRAP mission for these contaminated sites. We do follow CERCLA, or the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, as well as the National Oil and Hazardous Substance Contingency Plan, or NCP. And each site has its own record of decision with the selected remedy that's associated with carrying out the action at the site. We are funded annually by Congress, so we are part of the Civil Works budget. The Army Corps of Engineers has a good budget for all of our projects, specifically here in the St. Louis district, and FUSRAP is one portion of that. And that budget that goes through the national program funds all the mission sites. Our sites, of course, being here in the Mississippi Valley Division, the furthest west in the United States, with several other sites out east. Next slide. Drilling down to the specifics of the St. Louis FUSRAP site, you'll see some updates tonight on the St. Louis downtown site, as well as the St. Louis airport site vicinity properties. We do also mention the other sites, the completed sites, if you will, as far as substantially completed remediation, the St. Louis airport site, as well as the Laddie Avenue properties. You can go ahead. Pause on this picture real quick just to give you an idea of where the St. Louis downtown site is. If not familiar, you can see pointed out the McKinley Bridge as well as the Stan Musial Bridge. We still have a decent amount of work at the St. Louis downtown site, but it may sound like a broken record to some of you, but I have said it many different times. In project management, a lot of times when you, and especially at contaminated sites, you get down to closer to the end of your projected work that you need to do. Sometimes that can be the most difficult, and that has proved to be the case at the St. Louis downtown site, with a lot of intricate remediations that we need to do around structures, which compounds the engineering solutions that we have to devise in order to actually go in and remediate these areas. Next slide. The next slide, I think it may be buffering on my computer or not, but there it goes. So the theme that I want to touch on tonight, that we're going to end with some overall numbers, is kind of progress. So progress at the St. Louis downtown site, you can see almost 350,000 cubic yards, or a little over 4,200 rail cars, have been shipped out of state to a licensed disposal facility, as well as 54 of the properties within the record of decision boundary released for beneficial use. So that means there's been some sort of an investigation, maybe excavation to remove soil, and then returning the property to a state where we can returning the property back to its original state, as well as provide the documentation for unlimited use. So this fiscal year, the team's been doing a lot of these intricate remediations, as I mentioned. One that has the picture down there, that's working with a local property owner. That's the Kiesel property. Make sure that we're getting all the contamination that is there. Sometimes in the life of the program, a remediation may have been done in the past, and then recently we've been able to evaluate a lot of areas to see if we can get more, to try to reduce or even eliminate the potential inaccessible areas that would need to be monitored in perpetuity. So this is one of those areas where we had some good coordination with the property owner. Want to thank the property owner for that, as well as all the property owners that we work with at the downtown site and the North St. Louis County sites for their cooperation and coordination throughout the entire process. And just I think that's another commitment that we have with each of those, as well as the entire community, to let them know that we're here to do the mission and we're not leaving until it's complete, as indicated in a lot of the work we've done and some of the things that we've been talking about moving forward doing in the near future. Next slide. So part of the meat of the presentation, we're going to talk about the North St. Louis County sites. I touched on it a little bit earlier with the St. Louis sites, mentioning St. Louis Airport site, as well as the Laddie Avenue properties and the St. Louis Airport site vicinity properties. So the time frame is important here, because recall from the very first slide about the program overview, the Corps got the mission in 1997. So the Army Corps of Engineers hit the ground running, started removing material at the St. Louis Airport site, and that culminated in around 2007, completing the remediation at the SLEP site there. We still have facilities on there, and we still use it as a loadout area, as indicated on the slide. But a lot of contamination was removed off-site, over 600,000 cubic yards, or almost 7,500 rail cars, shipped to an out-of-state licensed disposal facility. We still perform environmental monitoring to include groundwater and air around the site. So groundwater on the site, and then air monitoring around our loadout area. And we also have our dedicated FUSRAP laboratory on site that helps us in our overall execution of the program. Not only does it provide a cost savings, but it also helps with any time we need a quick turnaround on environmental samples. We have the ownership of the laboratory to make sure that does indeed happen. Excellent. In the same vein, the Laddie Avenue properties. So when we pretty much completed SLAPs, the crews would move over to Laddie Avenue to have a substantial completion of the historic HIS piles, or Hazelwood Interim Storage Site, to make sure that we were addressing the source areas quickest, and to make sure there was no reintroduction of contaminated material into the atmosphere. So that's a part of the overall narrative associated with the St. Louis sites, and the massive amount of work that went on from 1997 to 2013 in order to get the St. Louis Airport site excavated and shipped out of state, as well as the Laddie Avenue, Laddie properties, to mainly the Hazelwood Interim Storage Site. You can see the historic photo there of the historic piles from back in the day that are gone now. Similar to the St. Louis Airport site, we still have environmental monitoring ongoing. There is inaccessible material under some of those buildings, and we coordinate with the property owner to make sure that there is any intrusive work going on, that we are informed to provide the appropriate support associated with that. Environmental monitoring includes radon monitoring inside those buildings. All of that data is also available in our environmental monitoring data analysis reports that are posted on our website. We do those every year, and we have an overall evaluation for each one that is available for public consumption or public viewing. And then we are working diligently. The team's working with the Department of Energy Legacy Management because we have gotten to a point of substantial completion at the Laddie Avenue properties. I mentioned the inaccessible areas that we are performing the site management plan and documentation associated with that, and then working with Legacy Management for the eventual turnover of the Laddie Avenue properties to be monitored. Next slide. St. Louis Airport site vicinity properties. The majority of this presentation tonight is going to be talking about that, but right up front, we wanted to give some of the facts associated with the site. We have, from the original record of decision, the site definitely has increased in number as far as overall vicinity properties that are associated with the St. Louis Airport site. That's not uncommon in a lot of contaminated site evaluations and eventual remediations that you have to do. And this is one that's indicative of where we're at today with the St. Louis Airport site, and specifically the vicinity properties, and specifically Coldwater Creek, And Coldwater Creek, of course, being next to SLAPs, where a lot of the storage happened, was allowed to go into the creek and contaminate the creek close to the site as well as downstream, as what we have been able to identify through our extensive investigations over the years. So you can see the amount of acreage that we do cover at the St. Louis Airport site vicinity properties, a lot of that being Coldwater Creek north of Dunn Road, which we have a lot of activity going on that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But going back with the theme of progress, you can see more than 300,000 cubic yards shipped to an out-of-state licensed disposal facility. So moving along the same lines as what we have done at the St. Louis Airport site and the Laddie Avenue site to continue the progress in the local area to make sure that we are doing what we said we were going to do and that we're here till it's done. So current activities. So this is a theme that you're going to see a few different slides that have current activities that are going on at the SLAPs vicinity properties. Right outside of our doors here, we are sitting here on SLAPs in our government facility, and right outside our door is McDonough Boulevard. Of course, it has been shut down for a good portion of time, but that's a success story in and of itself, as our coordination with the St. Louis County Department of Transportation taking this opportunity to thank all of the individuals that have been involved on the St. Louis County side, as well as our contractors and core personnel that made this happen, that allowed us to identify an opportunity to remediate along Coldwater Creek, where the St. Louis County Department of Transportation was able to replace the bridge, and then moving outwards from the bridge, our continued remediation of McDonough Boulevard to where we're at today. Remediation's completed, and we'll be hopefully starting asphalt here in the middle of the month as we wait for the asphalt plants to open, and we are finalizing the overall design and staking plan to make sure that we're ready to hit the ground running on that one. The next item there, of course, the Laddie Avenue area, the VP 38. VP 38 is actually where some of you may remember we used to have our old trailers at. So our old government facility as well as our old laboratory were there. We moved off site around 2019 over here to the St. Louis Airport site with our USACE personnel as well as our laboratory and consolidated operations over here. So we continued the theme of progress and worked on the VP 38 site, completing that. And then we're also working on Laddie Avenue, which is a SLAPs vicinity property, to make sure we're getting the contamination there. One of the processes that we work through in the Corps of Engineers is anytime that we do work on a property, we make sure that we satisfy the right of entry process. So we have a considerable amount of coordination with each property owner associated with the area, so that we can get the right of entry and the or access agreement, so that we're authorized to go in and do that work. So we still have some work ongoing in that site, and we'll be updating as we progress and moving forward and getting some of that remediation done there next on Laddie Avenue. Next slide. More activities that are ongoing is, if you move just a little bit north of McDonough Boulevard, you'll see Coldwater Creek Group 1. So another theme that is going to continue from here on out is we're going to start referring to a lot of these remediation areas as groups along Coldwater Creek. We have our status maps. From one of the previous slides, we had updated that status map and brought that to the North County CAG meeting, as well as posting on the website. We're also going to be posting some figures that show our groups that we are calling a lot of these areas, so that when we're giving these updates, when we're at the CAG meetings, we're all talking from the same sheet of music, so everybody understands kind of where we're at and our overall planning process. So our status maps, everything that we've done, kind of status of each individual property, and then our maps that show all of our Coldwater Creek groups and associated areas that require remediation, to help inform the public of what we have in front of us, where we're going next, and the overall completion of that, to try to help give a little bit better understanding of all the things that we need to do along Coldwater Creek in order to get us completed remediation. So mention Coldwater Creek Group 1, the amount of contamination that we have removed there thus far. This is an area, like I said, just north of McDonough Boulevard, adjacent to the former ball fields area, so that we can do remediation along Coldwater Creek in these areas. And if we need to go other areas, we can place it on hold for a little bit, go and do other remediations when they become available, and then move back to this Coldwater Creek Group 1 area. You can see Cades Cove there in parentheses. We'll be providing an update here in a couple slides, but this is one of those areas you can see that playing out where we've been able to kind of pause activities for a little bit so that we can shift efforts to another more higher priority remediation area. The Group 12 remediation, so that's just south of St. Sen Park on Foxmont and Elm Grove. There's a primary property owner we've been working with there for quite some time to gain access, as well as develop the overall remedial design to get in and remediate that area. So some area outside of the creek bank as well as on the creek bank for remediation. Such is the same with the remediations that we've done along Coldwater Creek, installing a pump around system so that we can divert the creek and fully remediate the area that's on the creek bank, even sometimes that could be below the water line. So that excavation is ongoing and we continue to coordinate with that. And once again, we thank the property owner for all their coordination that we've had thus far and anything moving forward. Mentioned Cades Cove, so that's our other area that we are focusing a lot of activity for remediation on right now, recently in the news, as well as recently talked about in a little more detail at the North County CAG meeting. And this is, I guess, a plug for the North County CAG meeting, Dr. Jones, to make sure that if you're not aware of that, it's a great opportunity for individuals in the community to come and collaborate, get your questions answered. And then also the CAG chair, Dr. Jones, as well as Vice Chair Ashley Bernal, great points of contact for any community members to reach out to. If you can't get a hold of us in our normal means with our phone line, as well as our email address, we also have some other community members that are really helping out in that regard. We do have a lot going on at the St. Louis Airport site and the North St. Louis County sites for a lot of the remediation and stuff that we're talking about highlighting today. So we appreciate all the collaboration and coordination we've had thus far with the North County CAG, and that will continue moving forward. So here at Cades Cove, some of the facts associated with it, we did have some accessible contamination in the backyards of six properties there. And in order to fully remediate those properties, we needed to demolish those homes. So a very extensive process that we follow with our own authority and the record of decision, and then following through with all of our associated other documentation that we needed to access these areas and to appropriately document what we needed to do to demolish these houses. So I'll say it again, a lot of coordination with these specific property owners, and we thank them for their overall cooperation and our ability to actually move forward in this area here at the Cades Cove. So we finished the demolition on those 6 properties and removed the debris associated with the houses. And then the contractor is moving forward, installing the security fence, as well as removing the concrete driveways and hauling that debris off site. There was a question at the North County CAG, which I'll kind of reiterate tonight, is when there's areas such as a concrete driveway that's not in contact with the contaminated material, something we do is we will pull up that feature or that structure and then survey it. Our health physics technicians will come and do surveys, document those surveys to verify that it's not contaminated so that we can dispose of it as non-contaminated waste. Another thing to point out there, it's the bullet above, that we do have a dedicated haul route behind the properties that we put up several months ago. So I want to thank the city of Florissant and their coordination that we've had with them over the past several months to make sure that we're kind of helping everybody along in this process and letting everyone know kind of where we're at. I think that there's always room for improvement in our overall communication aspect of it. So I thank Jeremy on that. with his consistent coordination with some of the public information folks at the city of Florissant. That's going to continue moving forward, as well as I mentioned, North County CAG, our additional conduit to get information out to the community and coordinate with the chair and vice chair for any other pertinent updates that can be sent out via their avenues. Some of the other facts there associated with the overall volume, as well as the tentative schedule that we're looking at completion. So of course, starting here in March, and then we're going to be going through October with the excavation all the way through restoration of those properties to include seeding in that time frame to establish the grass. And then once we're done, we'll turn those properties back over to the property owners for them to do with it what they will. Next slide. One of the last things as far as SLAP's VP's activities, we always like to mention is our overall sampling effort that we are doing. So currently we're over 41,000 samples taken in and along Coldwater Creek to include the floodplain. And that's helped us to identify the areas that you'll see on the status maps on our webpage. Following along with that, that's of course the initial investigation to get an initial idea of where the contamination is. We have to follow that along with more detailed sampling, or PDI, or pre-design investigation sampling in a lot of these areas to further define where the contamination is, further define how much contamination there is in these individual areas. And that helps us refine our overall schedule and budget associated with these areas. That's another feed into our overall Coldwater Creek master plan that I kind of mentioned to help us with our planning, as well as being helping the community, let them know where we're at, the real effort that's going to be need to put on the ground within the next several years for us to remediate a lot of these areas along Coldwater Creek. Already mentioned the sampling aspect of it, but we also have an inspection program that we started to make sure that any of these areas that we have identified for remediation are not being disturbed. That includes site inspections, periodic site inspections, taking photos, as well as we placed signs. So thanks for everybody in the community, as well as local leaders, elected officials, and all the input that we had on these signs to make sure that we had a useful conduit to the community and a lot of the property owners out there to let them know where the contamination was, as well as contact information if there's any intrusive work that did need to happen. This is always an opportunity to, once again, thank the property owners again, but each property owner that does have contamination on their property
You just
knows.
did for me. I have
as-
to constantly fucking fight you.
All right, take the opportunity to make sure that please muted until we get to the question and answer portion, or where we'll put things in the chat or allow people to come off when we get to that point. Okay, so my train of thought, let's see here. So that inspection program, that's ongoing. So we appreciate all the collaboration that we've had with those property owners to continue our access to inspect the signs, as well as inspect these areas where we have identified contamination. Another thing to note on where we have identified, if we had areas that were on the surface throughout the Coldwater Creek and the floodplain, is that we sent crews out to make sure that there was some sort of vegetative cover or some sort of cover over these areas as a further measure, as our temporary institutional controls, if you will, to make sure that these areas are not being disturbed or easily accessible to anyone that may be around the area. The last slide I have is really showing, as far as material goes, is showing what we have done over the years. So if you recall back from the previous slides about when the Corps got the mission and when we started our remediation and shipping campaigns, they can see the amount of cubic yards that went out from 1998 to 2004, almost 500,000 cubic yards, or over 6,000 rail cars a lot of that was, of course, the St. Louis Airport site shipping off there. That continued in the next few years, and then moving forward into the Laddie Avenue area and almost 400,000 cubic yards. As we move forward in the progress of the overall timeline into 2012 and 2018, you can see the large areas for remediation, meaning the St. Louis Airport site and the Hazelwood Interim Storage site being substantially completed. And then we start getting into more some smaller areas that may need more engineering solutions, that may be a little bit slower from an overall cubic yardage production standpoint. And then some of that's associated with the overall funding aspect as well that I mentioned earlier as we get annual appropriations from Congress. Fast forward and we get into 2019 and into 2026, you can see us start picking back up with our overall definition. We've got a lot of the investigations completed, so now we're going back and doing more initial investigations. Now we're going back and doing more defined investigations, but then continuing our overall remediation process. So really picking back up and hitting that progress associated with overall shipping of contaminated soil out. So almost 1.2 million shipped out thus far just from the North St. Louis County sites. This doesn't include the St. Louis downtown site, but a considerable amount of contamination already shipped out. You can see the overall number of rail cars there associated with that too. So something we're going to continue to update. Sometimes it's a difficult concept to wrap your brain around, well, how much is that when we throw some of the numbers out there? So we're always looking for opportunities to show that. This is one of the things that we talked about at the North County CAG meeting, as far as the helping the community understand what has been done thus far. And then as we move forward, like I said, the Coldwater Creek plan and the maps that were associated with that, what we have to do, what we have remaining to do, and when we have tentatively scheduled to do some of these remediations. So that's my last slide of material. I think we have contact information up next with our FUSRAP website, as well as our district website, and then our dedicated email address. And then as we move forward, we have our phone number, as well as want to point out our electronic reading room, where we do have a copy of our administrative record on there. So the administrative record being every document associated with the lead up to the record of decision for each of those sites. Okay.
Please feel free to take a screenshot of this contact sheet so you can refer back to it later. And then if anybody has any questions they would like answered, you can drop them in the chat, or we will move to the Q&A right now. But the first question we have is when and where is the North County CAG meeting? Do we have that information, or is that a better question for Dr. Jones?
She did actually. She sent it. She put it out there. I have it written down here. I believe the next one is April 2nd. Dr. Jones, if you're able to confirm that, I believe that's what it was. Yeah, I think that's another point of coordination we can have with the North County CAG to ensure that those kind of dates are getting out there. So.
Question is, do you know how many rail cars it will be to clean up the Archdiocese property?
Consider a dumping ground for those looking to get rid of just about any.
I don't. I think that's something we'll have to look at the design for the initial. We have initial volumes associated with that, and this dividing by 83 to kind of get to that point. So.
That's
Yes.
That's an answer
We'll
we
get
can provide in writing with the set of questions when we publish them.
And then going back to the first question, Dr. Jones had confirmed March 26th is the next CAG meeting.
Oh.
And then can you email the slides to the participants? Yes, we will. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to jump on and ask, or you can drop in the chat, either one. Can you explain the decrease in progress? Dr. Jones, can you be more specific?
I think that when we were talking about the overall
On the slide from
volume,
year to year.
yeah, the slide from the volume, I think that's, like I said, it's indicative of where we're at in the overall remediation. So the numbers from 2012 to 2018 and 2019 to 26 are probably more indicative of where we're at nowadays, because those numbers in the previous ones are kind of, they're large because of where we're at. We're right here at Slaps. We're right there at Laddie Avenue. Each one had a rail spur right next to it that were able to load cars and just kind of turn and burn the overall rail cars at a really quick pace. So that's why that overall shipping volume was quite a bit more in those years. And then as you see, it kind of dipped down for the other years as we moved more into the Slaps vicinity properties for that areas there. And of course, the HIS piles associated with that kind of second time frame there as well. So.
Okay. Next question, are there signs on the Archdiocese property?
Yes, there are.
Okay. Next question, when you posted update newsletters, there were millions of cubic yards of radioactive waste removed near Purcell Road and Eva Avenue. What was that about?
I think that it seems like two different spots, right? So Pershaw Road, we did an extensive remediation. So we worked with the county DOT, or not county, we work with Missouri Department of Transportation for I-270 and Pershaw Road area, where they replaced the bridge over Pershaw Road. So we're actually we had the opportunity to go in there and do a lot more excavation where they removed the bridge and some of the areas associated with that. We also worked with a property owner that's directly to the east of that, well, both west and east. There was quite a bit of contamination on that area there. So I mentioned it in the North County CAG meeting, where they put those overflow tanks in for MSD, that's on the western side of the creek, just south of Pershaw Road. A lot of coordination with them to remove contamination. That was actually an old oxbow kind of in the creek.
Sure.
You may not like that term.
Low spot. Yeah.
Low spot. So another low spot. And then on the other side of the creek, on the east side, working with the property owner there to remove quite a bit of contamination over there. So I know that's the Pershaw Road. And then Eva.
That was 36,000 yards, I believe,
Yeah.
somewhere in that neighborhood. They mentioned millions of cubic yards, so I just wanted to make sure we're separate now what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And then the Eva Avenue, of course, that's right adjacent to the ball fields, where we did some excavation along that, and they replaced Eva Avenue. So that's kind of a secondary there as far as our ability to go in and do remediation, and that's the county to come in and replace that Eva Avenue, which definitely needed it. If anybody traveled on Eva Avenue several years ago before they replaced it, it's so much better now. So.
Hey, going back real fast for anybody who can't see the chat for some reason, the next CAG meeting, it's at the Blackjack Fire Protection District Administrative Office, which is 5675 North Highway 67 in Florissant. So we'll pop it in. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, hearing none and seeing none in the chat, I will turn it back over to Phil for closing comments, but just to let everyone know, we will remain online for 10 minutes after the meeting for if there's any other questions that need to be answered. Phil?
Yeah, I think that I mentioned before about our continuing to hold these types of meetings. So this is, of course, our virtual update, and then be on the lookout for an invite for our next in-person meeting, as well as another plug for the North County CAG. We appreciate the opportunity to coordinate with them, as well as the ability to come in and answer questions. That's been really beneficial to our team, and I think that's really beneficial to all of the interested individuals in North County, as well as the CAG members. So if you have any questions, please bring them to us in these avenues. But I do see a lot of progress with our overall communication and coordination with the community, in that there's been lots of questions that we've had for a lot of these different meetings. And I think that our relationship, that I really thank Dr. Jones, Ashley, as well as Just Moms STL, Coldwater Creek Just the Facts, Missouri Coalition for the Environment. If I'm forgetting anybody, please forgive me. But all of the individuals that have been following this for a long period of time, I appreciate all of the efforts on your part and the efforts to reach out to us. Councilwoman Webb, appreciate all your efforts on that as far as a local elected official, and the ability to really reach out to us and get questions answered in a timely manner. When we're definitely committed to keeping that up, moving forward, coordinating with all the North County, as well as a lot of these groups. So,
You have one more question. Can you explain what is the most important update you want the public to know concerning all the updates you provided?
I think that as far as importance goes, I think that we always go back to our ability to communicate. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We have a dedicated site. We have dedicated personnel that have many that have been here for years, quite a few years. Same thing with Susan. And the amount of investment that we have as a program, from the national program level on down to the St. Louis district in this community, is immense. I do want to get that across, and as far as to toot the horn, if you will, for the overall team, to know that there's a lot left to do, of course, and we've been communicating that, and we want to provide even more detailed information for that. But that's kind of the overall update. I want to make sure that everybody really hits home, and you kind of a takeaway, if you will, and that we realize we recognize all the work that needs to be done, and we appreciate all the support from everybody online here and in the groups that we've been working with over these years.
Phil, I'm not sure if I'm unmuted or if I'm allowed to speak. This is Ashley Bernal, but just wanted to say a quick thank you to you, Faith, if you guys can hear me. And thank you so much for coordinating through the CAG. We really look forward to the opportunity for everybody to come and join us, to ask questions and learn more. But we really appreciate the RB Corps for bringing good, detailed information, especially at this last meeting, and really look forward to learning a whole lot more about the work that you guys are doing and continuing to do. My only question for tonight, I'll keep it super short, would be, could we begin to look at some hydrology maps for Coldwater Creek and the water spillways, waterways, former meanders, et cetera, so that we could begin looking at that as kind of a big picture all the way out to the Missouri River, kind of similar to the creek maps you provide, but maybe some hydrology maps in the future. But again, thanks to everybody for the work, and I think we're moving big strides.
I mean, yeah, yes is the short answer. I think,
Yeah. I think that is part of the detailed work that we do for each individual area. Just to kind of use a plug for that, Ashley, kind of thanks, because that really does highlight the historical investigations that the team does for each individual area. We also recognize that it's important to kind of look at it as a watershed in all of Coldwater Creek, and as far as the history associated with that, if there's any specific areas that would identify areas of deposition that we need to target. So that's kind of that overall investigation process that we continue to work through.
There is a question about testing on 3940 Parker Road, but I don't know if we can answer that right now.
As we always say, if you have any questions about a specific property, please email those to us and we'll definitely have that individual coordination. We have had that in the past, so that has played out quite well. And we're always open to any individuals that have questions or concerns, and we'll do our best to, within our authority, to make sure that we're investigating it, taking a look at it with a historical aerial imagery and seeing if there's a link associated with MED AEC activity or the material associated with our site. Can you comment on the current work that is happening along Coldwater Creek? I believe so. That's kind of what we covered tonight, the individual groups associated with that. So be on the lookout for another map that we're going to be posting on the website that shows the groups associated with that, kind of where we're at and the overall progress that we're making along Coldwater Creek. So we continue to try to get more pictures, or to help with the overall understanding of Coldwater Creek and where the contamination actually is, and those identifying the groups and the status of those groups is kind of that another step forward in that. So. I am Phil Mosier. I'm the chief of the FUSRAP and environmental branch in the St. Louis District Army Corps of Engineers. I just responded to a question asking name and time. And to my right, which probably looks weird on the camera, is
I'm Robin Parks. I'm the lead engineer for the St. Louis FUSRAP program.
Susan Adams, the program manager for the St. Louis sites.
And a question that gets asked a lot is kind of how many people are actually working on this. We have a core team of 20 to 30 personnel, depending on the level of effort each one is going to provide to the program. Many of them fully dedicated to FUSRAP. And then you expand on that with our contractor personnel. It can range around 120 between the North St. Louis County sites and the St. Louis downtown sites. So a significant amount of personnel that we have dedicated to the program to continue the progress that we've been making, and hopefully continue that same progress, or maybe even more, depending on several factors moving into the future. So.
Does anyone else have any more questions? All right.
Okay.
You're done?
Yeah. Once again, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll continue to do these types of engagements, as well as I'll put a plug in again. Keep a lookout for the invite for our next in-person engagement, as well as our our participation in the North County CAG. And we'll be seeing you guys next time. Appreciate everybody and have a good night.